I am Garrett Wilson, 30 years old, and my wedding day was simultaneously the happiest and most heartbreaking day of my life. Standing at the altar with Sophia, I could not ignore the half-empty venue where my family should have been. Every single one of them chose my sister Aubrey's engagement party instead. As we cut our wedding cake, my phone lit up with a message from my mom. "We need to talk. Now." Followed by 52 missed calls. Before I tell you how this all unfolded, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how this family drama reached its breaking point. Growing up in suburban Chicago, I always felt like I was living in the shadow of my older sister Aubrey. Our family consisted of my father Harold, my mother Margaret Aubrey, and myself. From the very beginning, it was clear that Aubrey was the golden child in my parents' eyes. She was 3 years older than me, academically gifted, socially outgoing, and seemed to excel at everything she touched. Meanwhile, I was the quieter, more reserved child who preferred computers to crowds. The favoritism was never hidden. When Aubrey turned 16, my parents bought her a brand new car with a giant red bow on top. They threw her a massive party at an expensive venue and invited practically everyone they knew. 2 years later, when my 16th birthday came around, I received driving lessons and was told I could use the family's old Honda when needed. My celebration was a small dinner at home with just the four of us. When Aubrey got accepted to an Ivy League university, my parents took out a second mortgage on our house to ensure she could attend without financial stress. They proudly displayed her acceptance letter in a custom frame in our living room. When I received a substantial scholarship to a respected state university for computer science, my mother simply said, "That is nice, dear. At least you will not have much student debt." My acceptance letter ended up on the refrigerator for about a week before disappearing. Throughout high school, my parents attended every single one of Aubrey's volleyball games, cheering loudly and often serving as team parents. They made it to maybe 2 of my debate team competitions, and both times they spent most of the event checking their watches or phones. My father once fell asleep during my championship round. Despite all this, I tried not to be resentful. I told myself that Aubrey simply needed more attention, or that perhaps my interests were just less exciting to my parents. I focused on building my own life and finding my own path. After college, I secured a well-paying job as a software engineer at a reputable tech company. I bought my own apartment in the city and established a comfortable life for myself. Aubrey, meanwhile, went to medical school and began her residency at a prestigious hospital in our hometown. My parents could not have been prouder, telling everyone they met about their daughter, the doctor. When I would visit for family dinners, the conversation inevitably centered around Aubrey's accomplishments and challenges. "Aubrey had such a difficult case today," my mother would say, serving her an extra portion of dessert. "She saved a child's life this week," my father would announce, beaming with pride. When asked about my work, I would begin explaining a complex programming solution I had developed, only to see my father's eyes glaze over before he changed the subject back to Aubrey. 3 years ago, everything in my life changed when I met Sophia Mitchell at a friend's housewarming party. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had the most genuine laugh I had ever heard. As a kindergarten teacher, she had endless patience and a natural warmth that made everyone around her feel valued. From our first date at a quirky board game cafe, I knew she was special. Sophia noticed the dynamic with my family right away. After meeting them at a holiday gathering, where my parents spent the entire evening fawning over Aubrey's latest medical achievement, Sophia squeezed my hand in the car ride home and said, "You know you deserve to be celebrated too, Garrett." No one had ever said that to me before, and I nearly had to pull the car over because my eyes welled up with tears. Sophia became my biggest supporter, encouraging my career advancements and personal projects. She would listen intently as I explained technical concepts, asking thoughtful questions, and expressing genuine interest. For the first time, I felt truly seen and appreciated. With Sophia's support, I began to establish healthier boundaries with my family. I stopped dropping everything whenever they called with an emergency that usually turned out to be something related to Aubrey. I started declining some family gatherings when I knew they would only lead to feeling diminished. Instead, Sophia and I built our own traditions and surrounded ourselves with friends who valued both of us equally. After 2 years of dating, I knew I wanted to spend my life with Sophia. I planned an elaborate proposal at the Botanical Gardens, where we had spent our third date. with a photographer hidden nearby to capture the moment I got down on one knee beside the koi pond and asked Sophia to marry me. Her joyful yes, and the tight embrace that followed, was one of the purest moments of happiness I had ever experienced. As we began to envision our wedding and future together, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps this significant life event would finally be the moment my family fully embraced me. Maybe this would be the turning point where they would show up for me the way they always had for Aubrey. Despite years of disappointment, I still yearned for their approval and support. Sophia was cautiously optimistic, but reminded me to keep my expectations realistic. No matter what happens with your family, she promised, we are starting our own family now. And in our family, everyone is valued equally. Little did I know how prophetic those words would become. The day after our engagement, Sophia and I began discussing potential wedding dates. We settled on June 12th, giving us roughly a year to plan. It would be perfect. Not too hot, the gardens would be in bloom, and it was far enough away to secure our dream venue. That evening, with Sophia beside me for moral support, I called my parents to share our happy news. "Mom, Dad, I have something exciting to tell you," I said, trying to keep the nervousness out of my voice. "Sophia and I are engaged. I proposed yesterday, and she said yes." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then my mother's voice, pleasant, but not exactly overflowing with enthusiasm. "Well, that is nice, dear. Congratulations to both of you." My father chimed in with a perfunctory, "Good job, son," then immediately followed with, "Have you set a date yet? You know your cousin Melanie is also planning a wedding for next year, and Aubrey has been seeing someone quite serious lately too." My heart sank a little, but I pressed on. "Actually, yes. We are thinking June 12th at Lakeside Gardens. We wanted to let you know early so you could mark your calendars." "June." My mother sounded concerned. "That is prime hospital gala season. Aubrey might be required to attend several events then as part of the residency program. We will have to see what her schedule looks like." I squeezed Sophia's hand, trying to maintain my composure. "Well, we have already put down a deposit on the date, Mom. It is pretty much set." My mother replied noncommittally. "Well, send us one of those save the date cards when you get them, and we will try to work it out." Try to work it out, as if attending their only son's wedding was an inconvenience to be scheduled around other priorities. After we hung up, Sophia pulled me into a hug. "They will come around," she assured me. "Once the planning gets going, and it feels more real, they will get excited." I nodded, wanting to believe her. Based on what I had seen at my cousin's weddings, I expected at least some financial contribution from my parents. They had given my cousin Tyler $10,000 for his wedding 2 years prior, and they had paid for half of cousin Melanie's upcoming celebration. While Sophia and I were prepared to fund our wedding, ourselves a gesture of support from my parents would have meant a lot. A week later, I arranged to meet my father for lunch to discuss wedding plans. I did not want to directly ask for money, but I hoped he might offer. Instead, as we sat in his favorite steakhouse, he spent the first 20 minutes talking about Aubrey's recent medical conference presentation. When I finally steered the conversation toward the wedding, my father looked uncomfortable. "Listen, Garrett, your mother and I may not be able to contribute much financially. We have just put a lot of money into renovating the lake house and with Aubrey's medical school loans." I tried not to show my disappointment. "That is okay, Dad. Sophia's parents have generously offered to help, and we have savings." "That is good," he replied, seeming relieved. "Sophia's family seems very supportive." The way he emphasized supportive made it sound like a character flaw, as if their willingness to prioritize their daughter was somehow excessive. As we continued planning, my best friend Derek initially seemed excited about the wedding. We had been friends since college, and I had always imagined him standing beside me as my best man. When I officially asked him over beers at our favorite pub, he enthusiastically accepted. "I would not miss it for anything, man," Derek promised, clinking his glass against mine. "I will throw you the best bachelor party Minneapolis has ever seen." With the date set, venue booked, and wedding party established, we sent out save the dates to our guest list of 150 people. Sophia's large, close-knit family accounted for about 80 invitations. My smaller family and friends made up the rest. Almost immediately, the responses from my side started coming in. Not formal RSVPs, as those would come later, but text messages and calls with concerning language. June 12th. Might be tough for us. From my Aunt Linda. We will try our best to make it work. From my Uncle Steve. Tentatively, yes, but I will need to confirm closer to the date. From my cousin Mark. Even Derek began making comments that raised red flags. June is a busy month for client meetings, he mentioned casually one day, but I am sure I can work around it. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. Surely my family would prioritize my wedding when the time came. This was just initial caution before confirming their calendars, I told myself. Sophia's family, in contrast, responded with immediate and unambiguous excitement. Her parents called us the day they received their save the date, asking how they could help with planning, and if we had registered for gifts yet. Her sisters immediately requested time off work. Her extended family members booked hotel rooms a full year in advance. This is how family is supposed to respond to your wedding. Sophia pointed out gently when I mentioned the disparity. They make it a priority because you are a priority. I nodded, but part of me still made excuses for my family. Maybe they were just more practical, less emotional. Maybe they were waiting for the formal invitation before making firm commitments. Maybe they wanted to be certain of their availability before getting my hopes up. But as the months passed, and we dove deeper into wedding planning, it became increasingly clear that my family's enthusiasm was tepid at best. My mother rarely asked about our plans unless prompted, and when I would share details about the venue or catering, she would often respond with comments about how expensive weddings had become or how a simple ceremony would be just as meaningful. Meanwhile, Sophia's mother called weekly to discuss flower arrangements and table settings. Her father researched photographers and DJs, sending us detailed recommendations. The contrast was becoming impossible to ignore, but I continued to hope that as the wedding drew closer, my family would finally show up for me the way I had always needed them to. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. 3 months before our wedding, my parents invited Sophia and me to Sunday dinner. This was unusual, as our family dinners typically happened only on major holidays or special occasions. Even more surprising was my mother's insistence that we absolutely could not miss this particular meal. We have something important to discuss, as a family, she said over the phone, sounding more animated than she had about anything related to my wedding. Naturally, my interest was piqued. When we arrived at my parents' suburban home, I immediately noticed extra care had been taken with the setup. The good china was out, candles were lit, and my mother had prepared her signature roast, something she usually reserved for Christmas dinner. My father was pouring champagne, which struck me as odd for a Sunday evening. Aubrey was already there, along with her boyfriend, Noah Thompson. Noah was a radiologist Aubrey had met at the hospital. They had been dating for about 8 months, and from what little I had seen of him, he seemed like a nice enough guy, quiet, hardworking, and clearly in awe of my sister. Garrett Sophia, Aubrey exclaimed with unusual enthusiasm when we walked in. She was practically glowing, bouncing slightly on her toes as she hugged us. My mother ushered us all to the dining room, where the table was set elaborately. After we were seated, and my father had distributed champagne glasses to everyone, Aubrey dramatically cleared her throat. "I have an announcement to make," she said, her voice quivering with excitement. She extended her left hand toward the center of the table, where a massive diamond ring caught the light. "Noah proposed last night, and I said yes." The room erupted in exclamations of joy. My mother actually shrieked, jumping up to embrace Aubrey. My father clapped Noah on the back so hard the poor guy nearly spilled his champagne. "Oh my goodness. Let me see that ring," my mother gushed, grabbing Aubrey's hand. "It must be at least 3 carats. Noah, you have excellent taste." "We are so proud to welcome you to the family," my father told Noah, his voice thick with emotion. "We have been hoping for this announcement." I sat there stunned. Not because I was unhappy for my sister. Despite our complicated relationship, I did want her to be happy, but because I had never seen my parents react this way to anything in my life. When I had announced my engagement to Sophia, there had been no champagne, no special dinner, no emotional speeches. Just that lukewarm, that is nice, dear, and immediate concerns about scheduling conflicts. Sophia must have sensed my discomfort, because she squeezed my hand under the table, before plastering on a bright smile. Congratulations, Aubrey and Noah. How exciting! Have you thought about when you might have the wedding? Aubrey, still basking in our parents' adoration, turned to us. We are thinking spring next year. A long engagement gives us plenty of time to plan the perfect day. But first we want to have a proper engagement party. I was thinking maybe the first weekend in June. What do you think, Mom? My mother clasped her hands together. Oh, that would be wonderful. The garden will be in full bloom. We could set up a tent on the back lawn, hire that caterer who did Cousin Melanie's wedding. I cleared my throat. Actually, the first weekend in June is when Sophia and I have our final venue walkthrough and meeting with all our vendors. It is the weekend before our wedding. Remember? My mother waved her hand dismissively. Surely you can reschedule that, Garrett. This is your sister's engagement we are talking about. We have had this appointment scheduled for months. I explained, trying to keep my voice level. All our vendors are meeting us there that day. It would be nearly impossible to reschedule everyone. Well, Aubrey said, with a small pout, what about the second weekend then? I stared at her in disbelief. Aubrey, that is literally our wedding weekend, June 12th. You know the date we sent, saved the dates for almost 9 months ago. There was an uncomfortable silence. Then my mother spoke in that placating tone she often used when she thought I was being difficult. Garrett, dear, I am not sure we ever confirmed that date would work for us. June is such a busy month. What with hospital functions and now, of course, Aubrey's engagement. You cannot be serious, I said, looking from my mother to my father to Aubrey. You are actually considering scheduling Aubrey's engagement party on my wedding weekend. Aubrey had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but my mother pressed on. Well, Noah's parents are only available that weekend. They have a cruise scheduled for most of the summer, and this is the only time that works for them. Noah, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Actually, my parents said they could make the following weekend work too. They do not leave until /and The 12th is perfect. Aubrey interrupted, shooting Noah a look. Most of the family has already responded to say they can make it. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. What do you mean? Most of the family has already responded. Have you already sent out invitations? My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. We made a few calls, just to check availability. Nothing formal yet. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Let me get this straight. You are planning an engagement party on the same day as my wedding, and you have already confirmed with family members that they will attend. Now, Garrett, my father said, using his stern voice, there is no need to get upset. We are just trying to accommodate everyone's schedules. Everyone except mine. Apparently I could hear my voice rising, but I could not control it. I set this date a year ago. I sent save the dates. I have paid non-refundable deposits. And now you are telling me that my sister's engagement party, not even her wedding, her engagement party, takes precedence. It is just one day, Garrett, Aubrey said, as if she were explaining something to a child. You could always move your wedding to later in the summer. Sophia, who had been silent until now, spoke up. With all due respect, that is not a reasonable suggestion. We have everything booked and paid for. Asking us to change our wedding date at this point would mean losing thousands of dollars in deposits and potentially not being able to secure a new date with all our vendors. My mother's expression hardened. I see Sophia's family has been very influential in your planning decisions, Garrett. Perhaps they would be willing to cover the costs of rescheduling, since they seem to have taken charge of everything else. I could not believe what I was hearing. My future in-laws have been influential because they have actually shown interest and support, which is more than I can say for my own family. I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair. Sophia, I think we should go. As we headed for the door, my father called after us. Son, you are overreacting. Family requires compromise. I turned back one last time. You are right, Dad. Family does require compromise. I've been compromising my entire life, always taking a backseat to Aubrey. Not this time. As Sophia and I drove home in tense silence, I realized that the fantasy I had been clinging to, that my wedding would finally be the event where my family showed up for me, was crumbling before my eyes. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. Seeing my father's name on the screen, I hesitated before answering. Part of me hoped he was calling to apologize for the previous night's debacle. "Garrett," he began, "without preamble, your mother and I have been up all night discussing the situation. We think we have found a solution that will work for everyone." I sighed, already knowing I was not going to like whatever solution they had concocted. "I am listening. We think it would be best if you and Sophia postponed your wedding until later in the summer, perhaps August. That way Aubrey can have her engagement party in June as planned, and you can still have your wedding this year. We would even be willing to help with any rescheduling fees." I nearly laughed out loud at the absurdity of it. After months of claiming they could not contribute financially to our wedding, suddenly they were offering money, but only to move it for Aubrey's convenience. "Dad, that is not happening," I said firmly. "Our wedding date has been set for nearly a year. We have sent invitations. People have made travel arrangements. We are not changing our plans to accommodate a party that Aubrey decided to schedule last week." My father's voice took on the disappointed tone I had heard so many times throughout my childhood. "Son, I thought you would be more mature about this. Your sister's engagement is a once-in-a-lifetime event." "So is my wedding?" I exclaimed, my patience finally snapping. "Why is her engagement party more important than my actual wedding?" "That is not what I am saying," my father backpedaled. "But Aubrey has always been sensitive. She needs this moment, especially with all the pressure she is under at the hospital. You have always been more independent." Translation: Aubrey's feelings matter more than mine, as they always had. "Our wedding is staying on June 12th, I stated firmly. "If you and Mom and Aubrey want to miss it for an engagement party, that is your choice. But I am not changing our date." "This is very disappointing, Garrett," my father said coldly. "I thought you cared more about family harmony." "Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about you," I replied, before ending the call. Over the next few weeks, the situation deteriorated further. My mother launched what could only be described as a campaign calling relatives to explain the difficult position our family was in due to my refusal to compromise. Soon I began receiving calls and messages from extended family members. "Garrett, sweetie," my Aunt Linda began during one such call, "I know your wedding is important, but could you not consider moving it? Aubrey has her heart set on this engagement party date, and you know how she gets when she does not get her way. Have you suggested that Aubrey move her engagement party instead?" I asked already, knowing the answer. "Well, no," Aunt Linda admitted. "But your wedding is still 3 months away. Surely there is some flexibility." Similar conversations played out with uncles, cousins, and family friends. The message was always the same. I was being stubborn and selfish for not rearranging my entire wedding to accommodate my sister's last-minute engagement party. Even Derek, my supposed best friend, began to distance himself. He missed our planned bachelor party planning lunch, claiming a work emergency. When I finally cornered him for a coffee, his discomfort was palpable. "Look, man," he said, staring into his latte rather than meeting my eyes. "I feel caught in the middle here. I have known your family for years. Your parents were practically my second family in college. And you are practically my brother," I reminded him. "Which is why I asked you to be my best man." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "About that, I am not sure I can make the wedding anymore." I stared at him dumbfounded. "You are joking, right?" "Aubrey called me last week," he admitted. "She asked if I would help coordinate some surprise elements for the engagement party. Apparently they are planning something big for your parents' anniversary too, since it falls that same weekend." That was the first I had heard about my parents' anniversary being celebrated at this event. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. "So you are choosing my sister's engagement party over my wedding?" I asked, my voice hollow. "I am not choosing sides," Derek protested weakly. "It is just complicated." "No, it is actually very simple," I said, standing up to leave. "You are choosing the same thing everyone in my life always chooses, Aubrey." Later that evening, while scrolling through social media in a moment of masochistic curiosity, I came across photos from a pre-engagement celebration at my parents' house. There was Derek smiling broadly, helping hang decorations. The caption read, "Planning committee for the event of the summer number, Aubrey and Noah forever." When I showed the photos to Sophia, she wrapped her arms around me and held me as I finally broke down. Years of being the family afterthought, of making excuses for their behavior, of hoping things would change, it all came pouring out. I keep thinking if I achieve enough, or if I find the right moment, they will finally see me, I sobbed. But they never do, and they never will. Sophia wiped my tears with gentle fingers. Their inability to see your worth is their failure, not yours. You are worthy of being celebrated, Garrett. You are worthy of being chosen first. 2 weeks before the wedding, with RSVPs officially due, the final blow came. Not a single member of my family had confirmed their attendance. Even relatives who had initially expressed regret about the conflict eventually sided with Aubrey's event. My mother left a voicemail saying, "We are still hoping you will reconsider the date, but if not, we understand you are making your choice." I was making my choice. The gaslighting was astounding. In a last desperate attempt to salvage something from this disaster, I drove to my parents' house unannounced one evening. My mother answered the door, clearly surprised to see me. "Garrett, we were not expecting you." "Clearly," I replied, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk about this." My father emerged from his study while Aubrey came downstairs. Apparently, she had moved back home temporarily to help with engagement party planning. "I want to understand," I said, looking at each of them in turn. "I want to understand how my entire family can choose to miss my wedding for an engagement party that could be held literally any other weekend of the year." "You are being dramatic," Aubrey sighed. "It is not your entire family, just the people who understand what is important." "What is important?" I repeated incredulously. "What could be more important than being there for your son, your brother, on his wedding day?" My mother smoothed her cardigan, avoiding my eyes. "Garrett, we have always supported you, but Aubrey needs this special moment. Noah's parents can only make this weekend, and we have already sent out all the invitations. Everyone has RSVP'd, yes. So have the engagement party the next day," I exclaimed. "Have it Friday night instead of Saturday. There are countless solutions that do not involve missing my wedding." "It would not be the same," Aubrey pouted. "We have the caterers, the tent rental, everything is set." "And my entire wedding is not set?" I asked. "Do you even hear yourselves?" My father placed his hand on my shoulder in what I suppose he thought was a comforting gesture. "Son, sometimes in life we have to accept disappointments. This is just one day. Your marriage is what matters, not the wedding." I shrugged his hand off. "If it is just one day, then why can Aubrey not change her plans? Why is it always me who has to accept disappointment? Why am I always the one expected to compromise?" The room fell silent. Then my mother spoke, her voice gentle but firm. "Garrett, I think you need to ask yourself why you are making such a big deal about this. If your relationship with Sophia is solid, what difference does it make if we are there or not?" In that moment, I realized there was nothing more to say. They would never understand, because they did not want to understand. In their world, Aubrey's desires would always take precedence over my needs, no matter how reasonable or important. "You are right, Mom," I said quietly. "My relationship with Sophia is solid. So solid that we are going to build a life together based on mutual respect and support. A life where both partners are valued equally." I headed for the door, then turned back one last time. "I hope you enjoy the engagement party." As I drove away from my childhood home, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but alongside it was a newfound clarity. For the first time, I was seeing my family not as I wished they were, but as they truly were. And with that clarity came a strange sense of freedom. The morning of June 12th dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a garden wedding. I stood at the window of my hotel suite watching the early morning light filter through the trees surrounding lakeside gardens. Everything was ready. The flowers had been delivered, the caterers were setting up, and in a few hours I would marry the love of my life. And yet, as I sipped my coffee, I could not shake the hollow feeling in my chest. My phone had remained silent all morning. No messages from my parents wishing me well on my big day. No last-minute text from Derek saying he had changed his mind and would be there after all. Nothing. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Sophia's brother James, whom I had asked to step in as best man after Derek's defection. "How are you holding up?" he asked, clapping me on the shoulder as he entered. I am fine, I replied automatically, then reconsidered. Actually, that is not true. I keep checking my phone, hoping someone from my family will have a last-minute change of heart. James nodded sympathetically. I get it. But listen, man, today is about you and Sophia, about the family you are creating together. Try not to let their absence overshadow what should be a joyful day. He was right, of course. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. As the morning progressed, the final blow came in the form of a series of text messages from relatives who had previously been maybes. So sorry something came up. Cannot make it today after all. Best wishes from my cousin Mark. Feeling under the weather. Will have to miss the ceremony. Congratulations from my Aunt Patricia. Car trouble. Will not be able to attend. Have a wonderful day from my Uncle Rob. The transparency of these excuses was almost insulting. I knew exactly where they all were. At Aubrey's engagement party, which, according to social media posts, had actually started the previous evening with a welcome dinner at my parents' country club. When Sophia came to my room for our first look photos, she found me sitting on the edge of the bed staring at these messages. Without a word, she sat beside me and took my hand. I know this hurts, she said softly. And I will not tell you, it does not matter, because it does. But Garrett, look at me. I raised my eyes to meet hers. She was radiant in her wedding dress, her eyes full of love and determination. Today we become a family, she continued. A real family that chooses each other, supports each other, and celebrates each other's victories. What we are building together is stronger than what you are leaving behind. Tears filled my eyes, but for the first time that day, they were not entirely tears of sadness. How did I get so lucky to find you? She smiled, wiping away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. I ask myself the same question every day about you. When it came time for the ceremony, the contrast between the two sides of the aisle was stark. Sophia's side was packed with family members and friends, all beaming with genuine happiness. My side had a handful of work colleagues and friends surrounded by empty chairs that served as a visual reminder of my family's choice. As I stood at the altar, waiting for Sophia to walk down the aisle, I could not help but glance at the empty front row where my parents should have been sitting. The seat reserved for Derek with its best man placard stood empty beside me, now filled by James, who had stepped up without hesitation when I needed him. But then the music changed, and Sophia appeared at the end of the aisle on her father's arm. The love in her eyes as she walked toward me pushed everything else from my mind. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the empty chairs, not my absent family, nothing but the woman who had chosen me above all others. The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. We exchanged the vows we had written ourselves, promising to always see and celebrate each other. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the cheer that went up from Sophia's family was so enthusiastic that for a moment the emptiness on my side did not seem quite so noticeable. At the reception, Sophia's father gave a toast that brought tears to my eyes. Today, our family does not just gain a son-in-law, he said, raising his glass in my direction. We gain a son. Garrett, from the moment Sophia brought you home, we have seen the man you are. Kind, intelligent, and deserving of all the love and respect in the world. We are proud to call you family. His words filled a space inside me that had been empty for a very long time. Throughout the evening, Sophia's family went out of their way to make me feel included and valued. Her uncles pulled me into conversations about sports and career. Her aunts hugged me and told me stories about Sophia's childhood. Her cousins treated me like I had always been part of their crew. I was determined not to let my family's absence ruin what should be the happiest day of my life. When people tactfully asked about my parents, I simply said they had a prior commitment and changed the subject. I danced, laughed, and celebrated with the guests who had chosen to be there. As the night progressed, I almost managed to forget the painful absence. Almost, but not quite. There were moments when it would hit me unexpectedly during the father-daughter dance, when I had no corresponding mother-son dance. When the photographer asked for family photos, and only Sophia's relatives gathered. When the DJ called for the best man's toast, and James stepped up instead of Derek. But each time that wave of sadness threatened to pull me under, Sophia would appear at my side as if she could sense my distress from across the room. Her hand in mine would ground me, remind me of what was real and important. "I am so happy to be your wife," she whispered during our first dance, her head resting against my shoulder. "And I am the luckiest man alive to be your husband," I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. As difficult as parts of the day had been, I was determined to focus on the joy rather than the pain. My family had made their choice, and I was making mine, to embrace the love and support that surrounded me rather than dwelling on what was missing. Little did I know that the most dramatic moment of the day was yet to come. It was just after 9 p.m., and the reception was in full swing. Sophia and I had just finished cutting our wedding cake, a gorgeous 3-tiered creation with buttercream frosting and fresh flowers, and were feeding each other the first bites, much to the delight of our guests. As I wiped a smudge of frosting from Sophia's lip, I felt my phone vibrating repeatedly in my pocket. I had been ignoring it all day, not wanting to be distracted from our celebration, but the persistent buzzing suggested someone was desperately trying to reach me. Excusing myself for a moment, I stepped into a quiet corner of the venue and pulled out my phone. The screen was filled with notifications, 52 missed calls, and numerous text messages, primarily from my parents and Aubrey. The most recent message received just minutes ago was from my mother. "We need to talk. Now." Scrolling through the earlier messages, I felt my stomach drop. "Garrett, please call us as soon as you get this." "Dad, 8 p.m. This is an emergency. Call home immediately." "Mom, 8:15 p.m. Everything is falling apart. Please pick up." "Aubrey, 8:30 p.m. The missed calls showed a similar pattern of escalating urgency. First from my mother, then my father, then Aubrey, and eventually from various other family members. As I stood there trying to make sense of this sudden bombardment, my phone lit up with a new notification. A social media alert. One of my cousins had tagged me in a post. Curious, I opened it and was met with a series of photos from what appeared to be a chaotic scene at my parents' house. The first image showed the elaborately decorated backyard set up for Aubrey's engagement party, complete with a white tent flower arrangements and a "Congratulations Aubrey and Noah" banner. The second showed the same setting, but in disarray. Chairs overturned, the banner torn down. The caption read, "Drama at the Wilson engagement party. Noah called everything off after finding out about Aubrey's secret relationship with her colleague. Total disaster." Thinking of the family during this difficult time, more messages began flooding in as I stood there stunned. "Your sister is hysterical. She needs you." Mom, 9:05 p.m. "Son, I know it is your wedding day, but this is a family crisis. Your sister has locked herself in the bathroom and refuses to come out." Dad, 9:10 p.m. "How could you not answer your phone on today, of all days? We need you here." Aunt Linda, 9:15 p.m. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to find Sophia looking at me with concern. "Everything okay?" Wordlessly, I handed her my phone. She scanned through the messages, her expression shifting from concern to disbelief. "Are they serious?" she asked, looking up at me. "They skip our wedding for Aubrey's engagement party, and now that the party has imploded, they expect you to drop everything and rush to her rescue." "Apparently," I replied, still processing the situation. "What happened exactly?" Sophia asked, scrolling through the notifications. "From what I can gather, Noah discovered Aubrey has been seeing someone else, a colleague from the hospital. He called off the engagement in the middle of the party." Sophia handed the phone back to me. "What do you want to do?" That was the question, was it not? What did I want to do? The old Garrett would have already been calling an Uber, rushing to salvage yet another Aubrey crisis, putting his own needs aside, as he had done countless times before. But I was not that Garrett anymore. "I want to finish celebrating our wedding," I said, firmly pocketing my phone. "Whatever is happening with Aubrey, there are plenty of people there to handle it. My place is here with you on our wedding day." Sophia smiled, taking my hand. "Are you sure I would understand if you felt you needed to call them at least?" I shook my head. "For my entire life, I have dropped everything whenever Aubrey needed me. Not today. Today is about us." As we rejoined our reception, my phone continued to buzz with incoming calls and messages, I silenced it and gave it to James for safekeeping, determined not to let my family's drama overshadow our special day. Yet as the night wore on, I could not help but reflect on the irony of the situation. For months, my family had dismissed the importance of my wedding, choosing instead to prioritize Aubrey's engagement celebration. Now that celebration had imploded, and suddenly they remembered my existence, not to apologize or congratulate me, but to demand I once again put Aubrey's needs above my own. Around 11 p.m., during a brief lull in the dancing, James approached me with my phone. "Your father has called 17 more times," he said apologetically. "And there is a group text from your family that keeps blowing up. I thought you should know." Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the group chat. What I saw made my blood boil. Aunt Linda. "Has anyone heard from Garrett? This is partly his fault for being so stubborn about his wedding date. Dad, he is not answering. Probably still upset about our decision to attend Aubrey's event instead. Mom, if he had been more flexible, none of this would have happened. Aubrey would not have been under so much stress. Uncle Rob, well, Aubrey has always been sensitive. The pressure of competing events probably contributed to her poor judgment." I showed the messages to Sophia, who read them with widening eyes. "They are actually blaming you for Aubrey's affair, because you would not move our wedding. Apparently my existence is the root of all family problems." I replied, attempting humor, but not quite succeeding. Sophia looked up at me, her expression serious. "You know this is not normal, right? This is not how healthy families function. Nothing about this is your fault." I nodded slowly. I am beginning to understand that. Making a decision, I turned off my phone completely and handed it back to James. "Keep this until tomorrow," I told him. "Tonight is about celebration, not drama." For the remainder of our reception, I was fully present, dancing with my new wife, laughing with our friends, and feeling truly appreciated by Sophia's family. For the first time in my life, I was choosing my own happiness without guilt or reservation. As Sophia and I left the venue under a shower of rose petals, headed for our honeymoon suite, I felt lighter somehow. The hurt of my family's absence was still there, but it no longer defined the day. What defined it instead was the love surrounding us, not from the people who were obligated by blood to support me, but from those who chose to do so. In our hotel room, as Sophia and I shared a celebratory glass of champagne, she raised her glass in a toast. "To chosen family," she said softly, "and to knowing our own worth." I clinked my glass against hers. "To us," I added. "And to writing our own story from here on out." The morning after our wedding, I woke to sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains and Sophia sleeping peacefully beside me. For a few blissful moments, I simply enjoyed the quiet happiness of being newly married to the woman I loved. Then reality intruded in the form of my phone, which James had returned to us at breakfast. When I turned it on, it immediately began buzzing with accumulated notifications. 137 missed calls, 249 text messages, and countless social media alerts. "Good morning, husband," Sophia murmured, stirring beside me. Then noticing my expression as I stared at my phone, "That bad, huh?" I nodded, scrolling through the barrage of messages. Most were variations on the same theme: family crisis, Aubrey inconsolable, everyone needing me to help fix the situation. But there were also messages I had not expected, from relatives who had skipped our wedding now expressing belated congratulations and asking for photos as if their absence had been some minor oversight rather than a deliberate choice. "What do you want to do?" Sophia asked, sitting up beside me. "We are supposed to leave for our honeymoon this afternoon." I considered the question carefully. Part of me wanted to ignore everything and everyone to focus solely on our honeymoon and the beginning of our life together. But another part knew that without some form of resolution, this family drama would hang over us like a cloud. "I think we should delay our flight until tomorrow," I said finally. "Not because they deserve our attention, but because I think I need closure before we leave." Sophia nodded, understanding. "Do you want me to come with you?" "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "Whatever happens, we face it together now." After rescheduling our flight, we drove to my parents' suburban home. The scene that greeted us was one of disarray. The elegant party setup now looked like the aftermath of a storm, with abandoned champagne glasses, overturned chairs, and wilting flower arrangements scattered across the lawn. My mother answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed, and her usually perfect hair disheveled. "Garrett," she said, seeming genuinely surprised to see me. "You came." "We came," I corrected, taking Sophia's hand as we stepped inside. The interior of the house was equally chaotic. Family members were clustered in various rooms, speaking in hushed tones. My father sat at the dining room table looking exhausted as he made phone calls. Aubrey was nowhere in sight. "Where is she?" I asked. "Upstairs in her old room," my mother replied. "She has not come out except to use the bathroom since yesterday. Noah has called off the engagement completely." He found text messages between Aubrey and Dr. Reynolds from cardiology. "They have been involved for months." I nodded, processing this information. "And what exactly do you expect me to do about it?" My mother looked taken aback by the question. "Well, she will listen to you. She always has. Maybe you can convince her to call Noah to explain." "Explain what?" I interrupted. "That she was cheating on him. I doubt there is an explanation that would fix that." "Garrett," my father said, joining us in the hallway. "This is serious. Your sister's life is falling apart. Now is not the time for sarcasm." I took a deep breath, feeling Sophia's supportive presence beside me. "I am not being sarcastic, Dad. I am being realistic. Aubrey made choices that had consequences. That is not something I can fix for her." "But you have always been able to calm her down," my mother insisted. "Remember when she did not match with her first-choice residency program? You were the only one who could get through to her." "That was different," I replied. "And more importantly, I am on my honeymoon. Or I should be. Sophia and I postponed our flight to come here, not to solve Aubrey's problems, but to make something clear to all of you." My parents exchanged worried glances. "What do you mean?" my father asked. I gestured toward the living room. "Can we sit down? This might take a while." Once we were seated, Sophia and I on one couch, my parents across from us, I took another steadying breath. Yesterday was my wedding day. I began, my voice calm but firm, a day that should have been celebrated by my family. Instead, every single one of you chose to attend Aubrey's engagement party. Not one of you showed up for one of the most important days of my life. We explained why my mother started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "You explained that Aubrey's desires were more important than my needs, as they always have been." I continued, maintaining my composure. "For my entire life, I have accepted being second best in this family. I have made excuses for the way you have consistently prioritized Aubrey's feelings, achievements, and problems over mine. I have shown up for her, for all of you, time and again, even when it hurt to do so." My father shifted uncomfortably. "That is not fair, Garrett. We love both our children equally." "Do you?" I challenged. "Because from where I stand, that has never been true. When was the last time you dropped everything for one of my accomplishments? When did you ever insist that Aubrey reschedule something important to accommodate me? When have you ever even once put my needs first?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Yesterday I married an amazing woman who sees me, values me, and chooses me every day." I continued, squeezing Sophia's hand. Her family welcomed me with open arms and genuine enthusiasm. For the first time in my life, I experienced what it feels like to be a priority to the people who claim to love you. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Garrett, we do love you. We have always—" "Let me finish," I said gently but firmly. "I do not doubt that you love me in your way. But love without respect, without consideration, without equal treatment, is not enough. And I deserve more than that." I paused, gathering my thoughts. I am not here to fix Aubrey's latest crisis. I am here to tell you that going forward, things are going to be different. I am no longer available to be the family scapegoat or Aubrey's emotional support at the expense of my own well-being. My priority now is my marriage and the family Sophia and I are building together. My father's expression hardened. "So you are abandoning your sister when she needs you most. Is that the kind of man you have become?" Sophia spoke up for the first time. "With all due respect, Mr. Wilson, Garrett is not abandoning anyone. He is establishing healthy boundaries. After a lifetime, of having his own needs ignored. There is a difference. Exactly, I agreed. I am not saying I will never be there for Aubrey or for any of you. I am saying that my support can no longer come at the cost of my own happiness and well-being. And I am saying that before I can consider helping with this current situation, I need acknowledgement of the hurt that was caused by your collective decision to miss our wedding. My parents exchanged looks clearly uncomfortable with being held accountable. After a long moment, my mother spoke hesitantly. We did not realize. That is, we thought you would understand the importance of being there for your sister's engagement. I shook my head. That is not an apology or even an acknowledgement. That is another justification. Just then, Aubrey appeared in the doorway, her face puffy from crying, still wearing what appeared to be yesterday's clothes. Garrett, you came. Her voice was small, almost childlike. I came to speak with Mom and Dad, I clarified. Sophia and I are supposed to be on our honeymoon right now. Aubrey had the grace to look ashamed. Your wedding. I am sorry we missed it. It was the first genuine apology I had received from any family member, and it came from the last person I expected. Thank you for saying that, I replied, slightly taken aback. Aubrey moved into the room, perching on the arm of a chair. Everything is such a mess. Noah found out about a mistake I made. Several mistakes, actually. He called off the engagement in front of everyone. It was humiliating. I am sorry you are going through that, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I did not want my sister to suffer. But I cannot fix this for you, Aubrey. No one can but you. She nodded slowly. I know. I do not know where to start. Maybe with honesty, Sophia suggested gently. With yourself first, and then with the people you have hurt. Aubrey looked at Sophia with newfound respect. You are right. She turned back to me. Starting now. Garrett, I am truly sorry for scheduling my engagement party on your wedding day. It was selfish and wrong. And I am sorry for all the times I have taken advantage of being the favorite. It was easy to accept the special treatment without considering how it affected you. Her words hung in the air, a first step toward healing, but not nearly enough to erase years of hurt. Still, it was more than I had expected. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. My father cleared his throat. Son, perhaps we have been less than fair in how we have treated you and Aubrey. It was never intentional, but intentions do not matter much when someone is hurt. My mother nodded, tears now flowing freely. We should have been at your wedding. There is no excuse for missing it. I am so sorry, Garrett. It was not a perfect apology, but it was a start. For the first time, they seemed to be seeing the pattern that had defined our family dynamic for decades. I appreciate that, I said carefully. This is not something that can be fixed in one conversation. It will take time and consistent effort to rebuild trust and create a healthier relationship. I am willing to work on that, but not at the expense of the boundaries I have set. My parents nodded, seemingly at a loss for words. Sophia and I are leaving for our honeymoon tomorrow, I continued. When we return, if you are serious about changing things, perhaps we can all consider family therapy. In the meantime, Aubrey, I suggest you focus on your own healing rather than trying to win Noah back. Some mistakes cannot be undone, but we can learn from them and do better going forward. Aubrey nodded, a look of determination, replacing the despair on her face. You are right. I need to take responsibility for my actions. We stayed for another hour, having the kind of honest conversation our family had avoided for decades. There were tears, defensive moments, and hard truths, but by the time Sophia and I left, something had shifted. No one was promising miracles, but there was at least an acknowledgement of the problems and a tentative commitment to addressing them. The following day, Sophia and I boarded our flight to Hawaii for our 2-week honeymoon. As the plane took off, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, not because all family issues were resolved, but because I had finally stood up for myself and my worth. Our honeymoon became a healing time for me. Without the constant anxiety of trying to please my family, I found myself more present, more joyful, more able to simply exist in the moment with the woman I loved. We hiked volcanic trails, swam in crystal-clear waters, and spent long evenings talking about the future we wanted to build together. A future where all members of our family would be valued equally. When we returned home, there was a tentative outreach from my parents, not demanding anything, but simply checking in to see if we had enjoyed our trip. It was a small thing, but significant, in its respect for our time and space. Over the following months, things began to change gradually. My parents agreed to attend family therapy where they were confronted with the impact of their favoritism. It was not easy for any of us, but slowly, they began to recognize patterns they had never acknowledged before. Aubrey surprisingly embraced her own therapy journey with determination. The engagement disaster had been a wake-up call for her as well, forcing her to examine her own behavior and the role she had played in our family dynamic. She began making efforts to connect with me as an equal rather than the adored older sister who expected constant accommodation. Derek eventually reached out with a heartfelt apology. "I was a terrible friend," he admitted when we met for coffee 6 weeks after the wedding. "I got caught up in your family's dynamics instead of standing by you when you needed me." I accepted his apology, but made it clear that our friendship would need to be rebuilt slowly with new boundaries and expectations. He understood, grateful for even the chance to make amends. 1 year after our wedding, Sophia and I hosted a family dinner at our new home. My parents arrived on time bearing thoughtful gifts rather than expectations or demands. Aubrey came alone. She and Noah had not reconciled, but she had used the experience to grow in ways none of us had anticipated. Derek was there too, now carefully finding his place in our lives again. As we gathered around the table, I noticed the way my father actually listened when I spoke about my recent promotion. I noticed my mother asking Sophia genuine questions about her kindergarten class. I noticed Aubrey waiting her turn to share news, rather than commandeering the conversation. Small changes, but meaningful ones. After dinner, Sophia and I shared our big news. We were expecting our first child. The joy on my parents' faces was genuine and for once uncomplicated by comparisons or conditions. "You are going to be wonderful parents," my mother said, hugging us both. "This child is very lucky." "We want to be involved," my father added, "but we will respect whatever boundaries you set. We are still learning, but we want to do better for our grandchild than we sometimes did for you." It was perhaps the most self-aware statement I had ever heard from him, and it gave me hope that real change was possible. Later that night, as Sophia and I prepared for bed, she asked, "Are you happy with how things are progressing with your family?" I considered the question carefully. "I am cautiously optimistic," I replied. "They are trying, which is more than I ever expected. But more importantly, I am at peace with myself. Whether or not they continue to change, I know my own worth now. I know that I deserve to be chosen, to be celebrated, to be seen, and thanks to you, I experience that every day." Sophia smiled, placing my hand on her still flat stomach. "Our child will never doubt their value," she promised. "In this family, everyone matters equally." As I reflect on the journey of the past year, I am reminded that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most profound growth. My wedding day did not go as I had imagined. The absence of my family left wounds that are still healing, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where I finally recognized my own value and refused to accept less than I deserved. To anyone watching who has felt overlooked or undervalued by the people who should love you most, your worth is not determined by others' ability to see it. You deserve to be celebrated, supported, and chosen. Sometimes, finding your true family means creating it yourself, with people who see you clearly and love you completely. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who consistently put others before you? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family challenges, and share with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be a priority. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you are worthy of being chosen first.